All right, welcome back. Today, we're going to put on our detective hats because we are diving into a huge historical investigation. We're talking about cracking open one of the biggest cases in all of biblical scholarship, the book of Deuteronomy. So let's get right into it. So, the central mystery here? It's a classic whodunit. Who wrote this absolutely foundational text? And, even more important, when did they write it? The answer to that one question, believe me, it sends shockwaves through everything we think we know about ancient history.
See, Deuteronomy isn't just, another book in the Bible. Scholars call it the keystone. Think about it. It's that central stone in an arch that holds the whole thing together. If you can figure out its date, you can lock in the entire timeline of ancient Israelite history and all their literature. But, and this is the big but, if you get that date wrong, the whole structure, well, it could come tumbling down. Okay, so our investigation starts with the most famous, the most widely held theory out there. This is basically ground zero for any scholar who looks into this.
So, the story goes something like this. Around 621 BC, workers in the temple in Jerusalem stumble upon this Book of the Law. King Josiah reads it, and bam, it kicks off this massive religious reformation. For more than a century, the scholarly consensus has been that this long-lost book was, you guessed it, Deuteronomy. So, case closed, right? Well, not even close. All right, now let's bring in our first set of dissenting voices, our detectives, if you will. They've looked at the same evidence and have come to a totally different conclusion, that the book is actually much, much younger than what the mainstream theory says. So meet our first two investigators, R.H. Kennett and G. Holcher. Back in the early 20th century, they came up with this pretty radical new timeline. They argued that Deuteronomy wasn't written during the monarchy at all, but after it all came crashing down, during what we call the post-exilic period.
Kennett laid out a few key clues. He basically said, look, the laws in this book just don't make sense for a powerful functioning kingdom. I mean, getting everyone to travel to one single place for festivals, that's totally impractical. And the law in chapter 13 about executing people for idolatry, he's like, that would have started a mass civil war since pretty much everyone was doing it. And then there's the law of the king. It sounds like it was written by people who were dreaming about maybe getting a king one day, not by people who already had one sitting on the throne.
And Holscher, he totally agreed, and he put it in a way that just, well, it sticks with you. He saw Deuteronomy not as some practical law code for a real kingdom, but as this idealistic blueprint. It was, in his words, the wishful thinking of a people who had lost everything and were dreaming of how they could rebuild their entire society from the ground up. Holter then brought two more huge pieces of evidence to the table. First, he asked a really simple but powerful question. Why on earth would a powerful king like Josiah ever approve a law that limits his own power? Politically, it just doesn't add up. And second, he pointed to some real-world evidence, these ancient papyri from a Jewish community down in Elephantine, Egypt. And guess what? They had their own temple and seemed to have no idea that there was some rule saying they could only worship in Jerusalem. And this is where it gets really fascinating, right? Because it just goes to show you that evidence is all about interpretation. Holster looks at that Egyptian temple and says, see, proof, the law and central worship didn't exist yet. But then, defenders of the mainstream view, guys like a scholar named Patton, they just fire right back. They say, no, that doesn't prove the law was absent. It just proves that as soon as Josiah was gone, people went right back to doing what they wanted. So you have the exact same clue, leading to two completely opposite conclusions. So, okay, we've got the mainstream theory, and we've got a really compelling case for a much later date. But what if they're both wrong? Let's bring in another set of investigators who argue the complete opposite, that the book is actually much, much older. So our next two detectives, T.H. Ostraker and the super influential Gerhard von Rad, they came along and just flipped the entire investigation on its head. Their claim? The core traditions inside Deuteronomy are actually ancient, going back centuries before King Josiah was even born. Ostraker basically dropped a bombshell on the mainstream theory. He said, everybody has been reading this all wrong. He argued that the whole point of Josiah's reform wasn't centralization, forcing everyone into one location. No, he said it was about purification. It was about cleaning up worship and getting rid of all the foreign stuff wherever it was happening. And his whole case really hinges on one tiny but crucial bit of grammar. He argued that a key phrase in Deuteronomy 12, which is usually translated as the place the Lord will choose, should actually be read as in any place the Lord shall choose. And with that one little change, poof, the whole argument for a single central sanctuary just collapses. In Ostriker's view, Deuteronomy never even demanded it in the first place. Then you have Gerhard von Rad, who came in with a much more nuanced theory. He looked at Deuteronomy and didn't see a book written all at once. Instead, he saw it as this magnificent final product of a really long and complex development of traditions. It's a finished, mature work that grew over hundreds of years. Now, to really get von Rad's theory, you gotta know this one key term, Amphictyony. It's a bit of a mouthful, I know. It's a concept that comes from ancient Greece, and it just means a group of tribes that are all organized around a central religious shrine they share. Von Rad was convinced that this was how ancient Israel was originally set up. So here's how von Rad thought it all went down, in 3 basic steps. First, it starts way back as an ancient cultic tradition at a covenant festival in a place called Shechem, which was the heart of this tribal group. Second, for centuries, these traditions and laws were kept alive and taught by the Levites. And then, step 3. Finally, around 721 BC, that's a whole century before Josiah, all this material gets gathered up, sifted, and shaped into the book of Deuteronomy that we have today. So for von Rad, this wasn't a new book found in Josiah's day. It was an ancient one that was just rediscovered. So after all that, where does this leave our investigation? Well, as you've probably figured out by now, this is one case that is still very, very much open. I mean, just look at this timeline. It really shows you the incredible range of this debate. Scholars have argued for dates all the way from the time of Samuel, around 1000 BC, clear down to the post-exilic period, a full 500 years later. There is, to put it mildly, absolutely no consensus. Yeah, the date of Deuteronomy remains one of the great unsolved cases in biblical scholarship. It really is the keystone, and every scholar is trying to place it in a different part of the arch. And every time they do, it builds a completely different-looking version of history. And here's why this all matters. This isn't just some academic puzzle. The date literally changes everything about how you understand the book. Is Deuteronomy a text written before the kings, sort of prophesying what would happen? Is it a reform program written during the monarchy to try and fix things? Or is it a heartbreaking look back after it all fell apart, trying to make sense of what went wrong? The answer to that question determines the entire meaning of the text. So the investigation continues. And now I'm going to turn it over to you. You've seen the evidence. Which clues do you find the most compelling?